Hello, I'm Avery or Hazel or Kylie. You can just pick one, I don't care.
Hello, I am Lily.
And this has all happened before.
Has it?
And this has all happened before.
Oh no.
And this has all happened before. Do you get it yet? This has all happened before.
I think I get it.
Anyway, welcome to From the Closet. Today we're covering Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated Season 2. You will find a link in the description to the Just Watch page for this series, which will provide you with links to every place you can purchase, rent, or stream this series. If you use the Just Watch app, it will automatically redirect you to your country's page if you live outside of the US. And if you use the website, if you live outside of the US, you will have to manually change the country from the website page. Also in the description is a link to our Patreon, where you can vote on future episodes, and you can also get access to episodes of this show early, as well as our sister show, Off the Shelf, which is about books. Which I should release the first episode of that next week. Next week in terms of recording. That was supposed to be released the first week of October, and it didn't happen.
Spoiler is not the first week of October.
Yeah. We were actually supposed to record this episode on October 1st. It's October 14th now.
It's 13th for me.
Whatever. Pretty much 2 weeks later. A lot of stuff happened, but mostly the big thing that pushed it back was I got sick. Anyway, also in the description is a link to Anchor.fm, which itself has links to every platform this podcast is on. It also has links to our Instagram and Twitter, where you can get notified whenever we release a new episode. With all that being said, this episode will contain spoilers, so you can join us next week for Rio 2 and Lilo and Stitch.
So, like Avery said, this episode was supposed to be a while ago, and I watched it a while ago, at least 1 week ago.
I watched like half of this season a while ago, and the rest today.
So, something that's going to become really in handy is that the episode list I am pulling off of has increased descriptions.
Cool. Let's just dig into them. I want to get through these fast.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we have the first episode. Wait, I mean, it comes right off of the last season with the gang broken up, everything in total chaos.
So yeah, these first couple episodes I remember being really, really fucking annoyed with Fred.
Yeah. Oh my.
And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, dude. Move the fuck on and stop acting like a creepy bitch.
Somehow, like, if you chop up the first few episodes and then just look at the rest of the season, Fred seems to just forgot the few episodes that he was being a bitch and just act his
it's almost
season
like the
one way.
show wanted you to forget. But yeah, so there was that in the first few episodes, and then there was also the way they treated Marcy. It didn't sit right with me. They welcomed her in as a part of the group, and then as soon as Daphne came back, which I'll get to that in a minute, they just immediately kicked her out. And they also kept calling her hot dog water when her name is Marcy, and she spoke up about it. Like, come on.
Yeah, so
Velma was the only one to actually be respectful.
Um, though I believe this is the first episode, and I want to say only episode, where the villain got away to later get
Maybe.
captured again in
Maybe.
a future episode, of course.
But yeah, so about the whole thing with Daphne, I understand, like, completely get her wanting to just cut everything off, wanting to go away because of, like, Fred just abandoning her and, going off because, everything he knew about his parents was a lie. Like, I get wanting to not join back with the group. But then she just eventually does a complete 180 that to me makes no sense. And the way the dialogue, like the way Fred's dialogue is worded in that scene is really weird. Because he says, like, he says something like, oh, if you want to join in, we'd be happy to have you. But then doesn't say that it's okay if she doesn't want to come back. And that's really weird to me because, like, that could have been character development for Fred. It could have also been a thing where it shows Daphne that he respects her decisions, and that would be a catalyst for her coming back. But there's none of
Though,
that.
I mean, by this time, they've already planned an entire reason why Daphne came back, an entire reason this is all happening. That they don't want you to forget after they told you. They don't want you to forget. But enough of that. Because Velma and Hot Dog Water are working for Mr. E. Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Letter. I always thought,
I can't even remember his real name. Isn't it like Ricky or something basic like that?
yeah, Pericles always called him Ricky.
Yeah, but I mean, that feels like a thing they just kind of threw in there and then didn't do too much with.
Yeah, even with like the hot dog water going with Mr. E. I mean, that only comes back for one episode. Then, I mean, she had two options and then just decided to quit running from one person, decided running from another.
They put Marcy in the intro in a couple of episodes,
Yeah,
and then they barely fucking used her this season.
I think and they only did it for the intro to make it just make it look weird. It's off, Without Daphne,
I
it's
think
just
we,
off.
I think we pretty much covered the first two episodes at least,
Yeah, his
because the man baby clown is not interesting at all.
yeah. I mean, the man baby cloud comes back in the third episode.
Okay, so what's after that?
Oh, oh, the Dreamweaver.
Yeah, I don't even remember the Dream Weaver.
It was the D&D reference. Anyway, Sheriff Stone past comes back to get him. And I find the intro to this episode I find really interesting because it doesn't match what happened to the rest of the people. And it makes complete sense when we find out that the intro was completely fake. There was
Mm.
no Dreamweaver in that intro because the person who was scared of it just made it up because he was the Dreamweaver.
Yeah, the whole thing is. I don't know. I feel like I've seen a similar story like 1,000 times. Next.
Um, a hodag of horror.
Okay, what is that?
Um, okay. I think this is the episode where they find, like, at the end of the episode, they have the one of the planet's favorite discs and the cheese.
Okay. That's something, I guess. This season does this thing a lot where most of the episode you can consider it filler, but then they have that one little thing at the end where it's like, you see, this isn't filler. This has something to do with the overall arching story. And they even do this in the second half of the season too. And
Yeah,
it's just like really
and the
irritating to me.
last
Like,
few episodes really is the stuff that has no real filler to it.
yeah, because like the last 3 or 4 episodes of the season completely abandoned the Scooby-Doo formula, which I consider to be a good thing because I don't like the Scooby-Doo formula.
Hmm. And I mean, other than what you know, there's nothing interesting in these episodes. I mean, I kind of like the Scooby Doo formula, but it's not. You cannot commentate on it. It's really hard to talk about it in detail because it's just the same.
Honestly, it might be beneficial to not just talk episode by episode and just talk in general about what happened this season.
I think that's a
Because,
good,
like,
but we should hit the episode where they steal the plant spirit disc because that is important.
yeah. So, like, the first half of this season is just kind of build up a bunch. There are a bunch of minor mysteries that follow the Scooby Doo formula. We don't care about those too much.
There's a lot of it. Like we're learning a lot more about the history of Crystal Cove.
I mean, I guess, but yeah, it's like we're mostly just building up to this disc being put together, and it finally happens in this one episode. I believe it was episode 13, where Fred comes up with this really genius plan to basically catch his parents trying to steal the pieces of the disc. And it's like, I don't know, it's more insane than any of the traps he's ever come up with.
I mean, he has to trap two expert trappers.
I mean, for me, this one was just like, it kind of came out of nowhere that,
Hmm.
like, has he always been this brilliant? And if so, why hasn't it been shown to this degree? And then, looking back on it now, why isn't it shown to that degree later in the season?
um, there's also something else in like the before this, which is probably a stage that Scooby Doo has never gone down and now has. Cassidy William died.
That was okay. So that was before that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit of a shock. It reminds me of like uh, that moment in Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, where they actually killed off a ranger.
What I find it so interesting is like you would with a Scooby Doo show, you expect Cassidy to just come out of nowhere. It's like I didn't actually die. No, that doesn't happen. That never happens. He
I
remains
mean,
dead until the end of the series. which then that's its own thing.
Yeah, we will get to that. But yeah, Cassidy's death, genuine shock. I wasn't expecting that to happen in this show. But anyway, we
And
get the next episode after the disc is put together, episode 14, and we have this superhero named Blue Falcon, which is the same name as Captain Falcon's car.
that's interesting. Yeah, basically, at this point, they're still trying to decipher the planispheric disk.
Yeah,
Because
the reason I bring up this episode in particular is that this episode is really funky with the score and the sound design, and I don't really know how to feel about it. I don't know. The sound design in particular sounds really weird to me, but
you
also the
dislike
score
it,
in places.
or
No, like it sounds like it doesn't fit.
yeah,
It sounds like they were kind of trying desperately to get everything sounding natural, and it didn't quite work.
Hmm.
And then the score in
Yeah.
places didn't fit for me either.
I actually do remember that episode. So
yeah, episode 14. And then like, what was 16 called again?
Aliens Among Us.
The aliens seem pretty sus.
I hate you. So we're getting into, like Avery said, we're getting into a more Scooby-Doo formula after this, with some of like parts of the episode being broken up with actual plot. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just being honest. If you wanted Scooby-Doo formula, stick with Scooby-Doo formula. If you wanted plot, stick with plot.
Yeah, for real. Because, like, this mixing together of the two is what really, really makes me not like this show.
But
And like, I'm never gonna watch this show again.
Mm-hmm.
I recognize that this is probably the best that Scooby-Doo has ever been, but I still don't like this show.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like rewatching it for me, it's definitely been like, I like the show for me, but I now can recognize a lot of its flaws as well.
Yeah. So we go throughout the second half of this season, and they pick up various things that get referred to as keys.
Which we
More
don't
on
even
that in a bit.
figure out until like the two final episodes. And I feel
it's like
all of this is just routine stuff until we hit episode 21. 22.
It's something like that. It's like the final few episodes, they decide, all right, now we are going to completely ditch the Scooby-Doo formula.
Well, this still has a Scooby-Doo formula, but it's really important. It's the Nightmare in Red.
Is this the one where, like, Fred is basically trapped in the movie studio?
Well, I was trying to aim on the episode where Scooby is having the weird nightmares.
Yeah, so we have like Scooby having weird nightmares, and it's kind of like a similar situation to how dreams work in Percy Jackson, where actually this shit is real, and there's like aliens or something that are trying to communicate with Scooby. I don't know.
So
It's
we
weird.
learn
And then they
about
go to the dream world
yeah.
to like get something. I can't even remember what they were getting it there.
I actually cannot remember what they were getting, but we do know they were getting information. The heart
Yeah,
of
they
the
got a lot of
Jaguar.
information for sure.
But we also know anyone who has interacted with a planispheric disk had their best self trapped away. Which, I mean, is a weird way to say that the planispheric disk corrupts people, but
Kids cartoon.
oh yeah, fair enough.
So we also have this one episode where they're exploring someplace, and I can't remember where they're exploring, but Fred gets trapped in a movie studio that has basically recreated all of Crystal Cove in a post-apocalyptic sort of way.
Oh yeah,
And
I remember that. That may have been I cannot remember. It was before or after.
yeah, yeah. So the reason I bring this up is because, like, as I was watching this episode, I was seriously getting like Life is Strange vibes from it.
Hmm. Oh wait, that was episode 21. The Man in the Mirror.
Yeah, that one. So that one, okay, that one I was getting real Life is Strange vibes from, where it was like, oh yeah. And then also I totally predicted that Fred was somehow signaling to the rest of the gang that it was a fake Fred that was with them.
Hmm.
In fact, throughout a lot of this season, I predicted a lot of the um, a lot of the reveals of like the who the creature would end up being.
Uh, like you can usually predict that sort of stuff, but I really like uh how they got to that said conclusion.
But then there's also one where it's like the creature ended up being George Avocados,
Oh
and like
yeah.
I called that one. But then there were the times when it wasn't him. That is literally never explained. Ever. They don't explain it.
Yeah. I don't want to.
But yeah, I mean that's something. So they abandon the formula and finally dig into this whole Nibiru thing, which is like a doomsday plot tied together with a planetary alignment cliche. Um,
When that's tied together with a this evil entity making people no, sorry, four people and a talking animal come together to solve cheesy mysteries that eventually evolves into getting all the planispheric discs and then freeing it from a cage.
it's so weird. And then also, okay, something I have to complain about with the planetary alignment cliche. So they're like, oh yeah, and this time there's a 10th planet. And I'm like, where's the ninth? There are only 8 planets.
I think this show was actually before Pluto wasn't a planet.
That was 2006. I Yeah, this show released in 2010. Pluto became declassified as a planet in 2006.
I guess they just didn't count. I guess they just counted Pluto.
But
I
yeah,
can't remember how their phones looked. That could have been taking place in the past.
there's also I don't know why this just made me think of it, but there's like this scene where Velma's talking about Jules Verne and how he like dreamed up the ideas of submarines and going to the moon. And Shaggy and Scooby have this conversation of like, they used submarines to go to the moon? News to me. And I literally was just thinking, where's that conspiracy theory?
They're not using spaceships. They're using submarines to go to the moon. The moon.
Right? Like, I want to see that conspiracy theory. Like, there are, I don't know, there are like portals in the ocean that lead to the moon, and they have to use submarines to go there or something.
Okay. Amazing. Okay, so
That would have been really funny. So
wait.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so then where to begin with the final episode? So they get the heart of the Jaguar, solve another mystery, and you think that's over. You'd think, oh, next episode they fly over town and everyone's missing.
Yeah.
Now, I actually thought, like, in my mind, I groaned. I thought, oh, we're having another whodunit. And then, oh, we already know. Oh, this is happening.
Yeah.
So, Mr. E, oh, and I think we should talk about this. Mr. E has said, like, does not want to partake in this anymore. Pericles decided to poison him to make him do it.
Yeah. So real quick, I do want to make a misdirect to something that happened earlier in the season. The Hex Girls showed up, and there was some music on the planispheric disc, and they just like sang it out loud. I wanted to bring this up. That the notes that they were singing, it very much reminded me of the main theme from Ori and the Blind Forest.
Really? That's what the theme that they were singing, if I'm correct, is the main theme of the entire show. It's the Locket theme. Which
it didn't sound anything like that to me.
Really? And obviously it's the theme of the Mr. E's password.
But anyway, back to the final episodes.
So yeah. The gang had caused an uprising because all the villagers are trying to find where to place the planispheric disc in. So they caused an uprising, but not before they actually found where they need to go. All the villagers...
Yeah, so this...
rose up against the robots.
Yeah, and then this whole thing starts where, like, they manage to defeat most of the robots and, kind of follow Pericles and... I'm just going to say Old Mystery Incorporated. They managed to follow Old Mystery Incorporated for a while until they get to the first gate, which, like, has a, 4 elements type thing, where each of the items that they got as keys or whatever were the solution to a puzzle. But there's also at this first gate, there's a whole thing with Marcy, and it's unclear if Old Mystery Incorporated killed her or not.
I think it was pretty clear.
But it seems like they might have.
I think it's as clear enough as they can do in a kids show. Because they had her cornered, with the guns. 5 seconds later, they cut to Scooby, guns blazing in the
We have had
background.
characters completely surrounded with guns in this show and managed to escape.
That's true, but I mean, they wouldn't cut to Scooby with gun sound.
There were no sounds, but
Oh, I remember there was being
anyway,
sound when they cut to Scooby. That's Scooby obviously heard it and then looked up at Daphne and Velma. Then Velma could only shake her head and said, "We have to go forward."
I specifically remember they could hear her screaming.
I don't remember the
But
screaming,
whatever.
but I do remember the gunshots.
Whatever. They get through the door, and they have all these puzzles where they're going through separate other doors. And, okay, so they go through the third one, and the third one basically, like, it falls over and becomes a boat, and then they ride downstream, and then they end up in this dimension where it's basically nothing but water, and they have to swim down to the fourth door. And I bring this up and I specify exactly this whole thing because there is no fucking way in hell that Old Mystery Incorporated can follow them.
Oh, yeah.
No possible way.
I was thinking the same thing. There was not a way in hell that they could follow them. And they weren't even wet, too. Like, when they showed up, they weren't even wet.
Yeah, they show up at the end. No explanation is given. None whatsoever. It was just like, okay, cool. I love this lazy writing here. There was something else later that I out loud said that's just lazy. Like, that's just extremely lazy, referring to the writing. And I can't remember what it specifically was. But there was quite a bit of lazy writing throughout this whole group of last few episodes.
I mean, I think they're just desperately trying to get the entire series, just in a nice bow. Which, to their credit, is probably the only Scooby-Doo show that can say they did that.
Yeah, so this whole thing, they get to the end and there's this creature locked in like a sarcophagus. And Pericles shows up, sets it free, and then it basically eats someone. I fucking can't remember who.
It eats
No, it eats someone else and then fuses with Pericles.
If it ate anyone else, it would be the Fred's real parents. Oh, by the way, they're here too. Plastic surgery and all.
Yeah, that was
weird.
That one was a yikes. Like, the whole time I was like, this very much feels like Life is Strange. And then they pull a misdirect and it's actually an old movie studio that's been changed to look like post-apocalyptic Crystal Cove.
And apparently masks just weren't good enough for them.
Oh yeah, and they also never explained how Fred's how when Fred is going around to different places in Cove inside the movie studio. They don't really explain very well um, how his dad knows where he's going. I mean, I guess you could say like cameras and shit or whatever, but
I was just thinking
like
like maybe the wife was bugged or something.
they usually do a breakdown where they tell you these kinds of details, but they didn't give you that detail. And I thought that was really weird.
Yeah, I guess that can be chopped up to lazy writing. I just always assumed, you know, I guess old Daphne is what they wanted you to believe was just wired.
Jeepies.
So we have this evil thing coming out, and if it got out of that cave, probably gonna kill everyone and everything.
Yeah, and they only ever call it the evil entity, which just like, come on, give it a name. Also, it looks like a hentai monster.
Why did you say that?
That's literally the only thing I could think of whenever it was doing anything.
I was
It
thinking of more
literally
like
attacks with
Cthulhu, but
tentacles.
like, okay.
It literally attacks people with tentacles, traps them with tentacles, and it's just like
Octopus?
there's way
Cthulhu?
more than 8.
I'm just saying, why was your first thought not, I don't know, something like an octopus instead of hentai?
Because it doesn't look anything like an octopus.
It looks more like Cthulhu. But like, there's a lot of things
Yeah,
with tentacles that's not hentai.
not really. Like not like that. Like particularly plant-based tentacles, you see that in a lot of hentai.
Anyway, so we see this devour everything. Even so, up until this point, we don't really know where all the residents of Crystal Cove has gone, but now they're here, being consumed.
Yeah, and it was at this point that I knew that like they killed off like Bronson Stone and a couple of other characters, and I was like, okay, yeah, everybody's coming back. Even the old Mystery Incorporated crew, they're coming back.
And
I wasn't yet ready for Cassidy coming back, but that was something.
yeah,
So
in the
yeah,
way that they reset it, of course they would have to come back.
yeah, which we'll talk about that here in a minute. But
Mhm.
so basically, to fight this thing, Scooby has to
Oh, it's so cliche.
basically stab a crystal with a stick.
Basically,
Yeah, and that resets
the heart,
everything.
the heart of the jaguar wasn't the physical heart that was probably made out of jade. It was in us the entire time.
Which, yay, I love cliches. The real power was inside us all along.
I'm starting to think that I was actually remembering because I actually um I was confusing this entire scene and I merged it with a different Scooby-Doo movie in where
Maybe the
Scrappy
real
Doo,
mystery was.
like,
Maybe the real mystery was the friends we made along the
I
way.
hate you. Anyway, but where Scrappy Doo was the villain, and I was convinced that Scrappy Doo was the evil entity until I actually saw it. I was like, wait, this what's wrong with my memory?
Well, what's wrong with your memory is that season 1 teased Scrappy Doo,
Um,
and they never did anything with that.
I don't I think they just is I mean, obviously they had to do a reference. That was just a reference to Scrappy Doo, and I
I
was
mean, I don't know.
overhyping
Like
it.
cutting away to it after Fred said something. I can't even remember what he said.
No, we should never talk. We have all promised not to talk about it, and I think it's a heavy reference on from the
They cut
Scooby
away
Doo.
to it, and there's like ominous music, and it's just like,
Yeah,
mm,
I feel like it was a way for Scooby Doo to show we are never bringing back this character. Because man, that was a dark time for Scooby Doo.
mm. It seemed like a teaser to me watching it.
Honestly, I actually thought it was, and but just from my memory, and I guess I was mistaken. So yeah,
But yeah,
they destroy the evil
so
entity, and then they get transported to a world where the evil entity never existed.
and this fucking pissed me the hell off.
Hmm?
I really, really hate these endings in shows where it's like it was all a dream or whatever. And like, granted, this isn't that. This is just a step down from that. Because now they're in a world where none of this shit ever happened.
Yeah, I mean,
And
they
I
just
think the
created an.
fact that none of this shit happened is what really annoys me.
Hmm.
The entire show that I just watched didn't happen.
I mean, yeah,
Except to like
five
4 people.
people. Six if you count Scooby as a person. Because apparently Mr. E has knows every timeline that has ever existed.
The new Mr. E. Yeah. That's weird. And that probably never got explained in a different series or whatever.
Oh no, the next series was so god awful that I wanted to take out my eyeballs.
Yeah. That it's just a cliffhanger that will never get resolved.
Though, except it should have been resolved. Apparently, and this is only happened when I only learned about this when I was researching it. This show was supposed to be getting a third season.
Yuck.
So yeah, this could have actually been answered. But nope, it was cancelled. On a okay note, I mean, the reset was interesting, but I feel like they could have done a bit more with it.
Yeah. They could have done a much better job, I feel. Like, I didn't really like the writing, and I was kind of intrigued to see where all this planispheric disk stuff went, and it went in a direction that I didn't feel was great.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when it comes to how we feel, but I think you would agree that this is a better season than season one.
Yeah, it's better than season one. Granted, I didn't go back and listen to our ratings for season one, so
Damn, we really need to just
take from that what you will. It doesn't matter what I rate this season. Just know I consider it better than season one.
yeah, we really need to
Not by
just
much, though.
compile all of our ratings into one sheet or something.
Mm. So yeah, regarding this show, when I looked it up on Google, there's actually only one critic rating that even came up. So IMDb gives this show overall, not just this season,
Mhm.
8.1 out of 10. and 96% of Google users liked the show.
Yeah, when you're going into this as a Scooby-Doo show, I can understand. Um, Actually, before I go into this, there is a little thing I want to add. This show, like, basically destroys a lot of the stereotypes that Scooby-Doo has built up. And one of the biggest ones is the entire series, the mention of "Where are you, Scooby-Doo?" was only said once.
Bullshit. I swear to God it was said multiple times. I swear to God it was either "Where are you, Scooby-Doo?" or "Scooby-Doo, where are you?" That is said multiple times in this show,
No, I don't.
even in this season.
It was said in this season at the end.
It's said multiple times for sure. Maybe not like screamed out. I know at least one time it's screamed out by, I think, Shaggy. But it is said multiple times for sure. And also Scooby Snacks are referenced multiple times, way more than they were in season 1.
I mean, but also Scooby Stacks were just shown. They're not, and there's definitely not like a overbearance on, will you do it for a Scooby snack? Two
Sure,
Scooby
sure. And I
snacks?
know we had a conversation about Velma losing her glasses, and I think that
Mhm.
does happen once in this season.
I can't remember, but I don't doubt you. But like a lot of these, overbearing cliches on Scooby Doo, they would happen multiple times an episode in like the old seasons of Where Are You, Scooby Doo? And they would
Yeah,
just keep
that okay,
repeating every season.
The Where Are You Scooby Doo thing, while it does happen multiple times, it's not in every episode. So, like, I want to say it happens at least 3 or 4 times this season
Mhm.
where they actually say, Scooby Doo, where are you? Or where are you, Scooby Doo? Or whatever.
Like a lot of, and I know there's more cliches that I just can't remember, but
Some not unique to, some that are not like,
not even unique
some
to
that are
Scooby Doo.
general cliches and not just cliches that mostly occur in Scooby Doo.
So I actually do want to applaud the makers of this because they really went out of their way to make a unique Scooby Doo experience.
And also, a lot of people really ship Velma and Marcy in this series.
I can see it. So
And there's also a possibility that the creators may have intended for that to be a thing.
I'm
We know that James Gunn was trying to have Velma be explicitly a lesbian in some Scooby-Doo movie that he was working on, and now there's this new movie coming out where she is explicitly a lesbian.
yeah, I'm not gonna comment on stuff we don't know about, but it's a possibility.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's about it for this series. So I guess there's only one more thing to do.
Yeah, rate it.
Um, I actually want to go back to what Avery said. Since we don't know what our rating is, whatever I rate it, it is definitely this series is fuck. This season is better than the first one.
Yeah, but I feel like we should still give a number rating
Oh yeah, of
anyway because
course.
that's typical.
Because I just want to make sure in case I accidentally give my numbered rating below the season one. Um, you know what? I think this series has too much water. I'll give
So
it a 7.
7.8.
Yeah, I'll give it a 7.8.
I'm giving this season a 7.0.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
like that's the highest I feel like I can give it. Um
I wow. I thought you were going to go way lower.
I can't go too much lower. It's at least trying, and I'm trying to rate it not based on my own biases and more based on what it is.
Hmm.
And I think that's why you're kind of surprised that I'm rating it this high.
I mean, a lot. Even during this recording, you're saying a lot of like, what it did bad, and I mean, I agree with you on a
Yeah,
lot of the
but
points.
that's still like even though it is the overall plot and the whole point that the show is building towards, it's still only like 5% of the show.
Hmm.
And if you like the Scooby-Doo formula, well, this has a lot there for you. So
Yeah,
take that for what you will.
I think we're done here.
But yeah, what?
I think we're done here.
Yeah, pretty much. I was literally about to close it out. So yeah, you can join us next week for Rio 2 and Lilo and Stitch. Um, and with that being said, I've been Avery. That's been Lily. And I think my plan of letting the herd enslave humanity is pretty darn good.